This one's a bop.
Yeah, this goes hard. It's a banger, dude.
Yeah. Shout out Future Pop.
Future pop. Banger.
Apparently, I am an enjoyer of Future Pop, whatever that is. I don't know how to turn it off. It won't turn off.
Uh-oh.
We might be doing this the entire episode.
Yeah, I guess we're getting into future pop.
Yeah. Yeah, I stopped it like, I don't know, 20 seconds ago, and it's still going.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, you were looking at the face of a man who just got his ass kicked by a computer. Our dear friend Uncle Cooper here. Yeah, not me, him. Our dear friend Uncle Cooper here was logging on to get on the on the connection here, and he got the great man, I can hardly think with this music going. He got this he got the thing that everyone hates to get, which is, hey, we need to install updates. So it took him a while to get on, and then two-factor authentication kicked his ass. And then he remembered he came down without his drink and his gum, and so we had to give him a chance to go get that. I don't know how to stop. Oh, it stopped. Well, that was abrupt. I kind of, that's become like, that's like my favorite part of doing the show now, is like we get to like bop out to this music at the beginning, and then I get to try to use my shitty little mouse to gradually drag the volume down and get it to fade out, all professional like. Well, anyways, so title today.
Sorry,
what did you say?
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh,
I was just going to interject that unlike most Zoomers, I can grow a beard.
Yes. Yeah, Cooper has not been overcome by the soy.
That's right.
Because, yeah, Cooper is one of the exceptional Zoomers. Part of being a Zoomer is like being exceptional and advertising how unexceptional you are. Mm-hmm. This kind of seems to be a Zoomer thing.
Yeah.
Irony. Meta.
Pretty mediocre. Subpar.
So this show is going to be kind of interesting. It's a little bit of a departure from what we've been doing lately, reading these very sober spiritual writings of Father Seraphim Rose, which are absolutely excellent writings. If you guys haven't listened to the live reading series we've been doing, I recommend you go back and do so. This one is probably going to be a little more, a little more entertaining, a little more fun. We're going to be going through this video by this guy that Cooper introduced me to yesterday. This is, I don't necessarily want to oversell it, but I think it's kind of hard to oversell this guy. He is legitimately one of the funniest people that I've ever seen. One of the most brilliant, artists that I've ever seen. And
it's king of the incels himself.
Yeah. The king of the incels himself, Gerbert Johnson. The dude's fucking name is Gerbert Johnson. If you don't know what Gerbert is, I don't know if this is where he got the name or if he just like mistyped Herbert on his phone and it was Gerbert and he thought that was funny. But there was a little Muppets kind of TV show in like the 80s. It was like a Christian kids show with a little Muppet guy. He's like this little orange guy named Gerbert. That name has been the funniest fucking thing I've ever heard, like my entire life. The word Gerbert just makes me laugh. And then Cooper hits me up and he's like, hey, you should see this guy. He's really funny. He makes really good, like, ironic Zoomer nihilist content that's actually really good. And his name is Gerbert Johnson. And I was just like, no. Gerbert Johnson is the best name you could come up with for a name like this. So this guy it's kind of interesting. We'll kind of use this video as like a jumping off point to see what it really illustrates the Zoomer psychology. Both there's a very we're going to say meta a lot tonight. There's this big ironic self-referential thing going on in the Zoomer mind, and it brings itself out in their art and their humor. Now, I am not a Zoomer. I'm kind of right on the fringe of millennial and Gen X. I was born in '88. So I would really be squarely in millennial, but just the way I was brought up and the family members I had and stuff, I spent a lot of time around Gen X people and took on a lot of their worldview and their habits and everything. So Cooper is like exceptionally Zoomer. He is just pure distilled Zoomer, but he's close enough to millennials that he's able to be kind of a little self-aware in his awareness of his own Zoomerism. So I find this thing really fascinating. The relationship between the generations, the way one generation kind of sets the stage for the next, and the way you get these cycles, like the fourth turning thing, you get these cycles that go through generations just because of the psychology of the person in that role and paired with the world events that happened at the time. And it seems to correspond really tightly with technological development. But each generation has its own psychology, almost like really properly in the biblical sense, it's a spirit. The spirit of that generation that really captures its ethos. And it's interesting that we have this kind of self-aware thing where we actually identify this. We recognize this and see this in patterns of behavior among particularly others. I think it's really easy to notice others' differences from us, and we identify, oh, there's a group of people that are all about the same age, from the same upbringing, and they all act the same way. And so then you kind of start looking back at yourself and saying, okay, this is how I act, and these are the people I'm like. But I think it's a really fruitful, I guess, territory to delve into to try to come up with some interesting insights into politics and religion and psychology and that sort of thing. And I have basically the perfect co-host for this, because Cooper is well, I guess you can't be king of the Zoomers now because Gerbert's king of the Zoomers.
No, he's king of the incels. I'm not
king
an
of the
incel.
incels. Oh, you're not an incel. Okay, so
I'll
if he's king of the
Zoomer.
incels, okay, you can be the king of the Zoomers. We'll change the thumbnail later. Resident Zoomer to king of the Zoomers. So Cooper will help us as we kind of dive into the Zoomer brain. And on a serious note, which is kind of it kind of goes against the spirit of doing Zoomer content to like intentionally highlight the serious part of it. But I'm not a Zoomer, so I'm not going to be held to their same standards. On a serious note, I think that this is actually really useful in anticipating what the world is going to look like 5, 10, 15, 20, 40, 50 years from now. Because if you can understand Zoomer psychology, as one of Gerbert Johnson's videos I was just watching says, these are the future doctors. These are the future construction workers. These are the future lawyers and well, maybe not lawyers, we'll see. But these are the future businessmen. Like you can look at their art, look at the way that they portray themselves, and you can understand what the world is going to look like. For some people, that's probably a terrifying prospect. For me, I think it's actually kind of fascinating because for whatever reason, I get Zoomer humor. Maybe it's because of the amount of time I've been on the internet or the particular circles I've run in or something. I don't know what it is, but I really get Zoomer humor, and it gets me. It is some of the funniest shit I've ever seen, and I laugh my ass off about it. And I don't like it. Just I don't know why. I don't know why it's so funny, but it's fascinating to me. So, Cooper, do you have anything you want to throw in here or get into before we start doing the video?
No.
All right. All right. Let's get this screen share. Make sure everything looks. See, now why does it? I specifically said don't do that. I said do this. There. All right. So this is Gerbert Johnson. He put out this video, I think it was like a month ago, something like that, called "The Death of the Family." Now I'm going to kind of narrate a little bit of this because we have just now started uploading Xavier has now started uploading the podcast to the podcast audio feed. So if you are someone who doesn't usually watch stuff on YouTube, or the majority of your content you listen to via podcast, you actually now can get King Pilled on your podcast feed, regularly updating anytime we do an episode. So you can go to any podcatcher you want. For whatever reason, I don't know why the Apple Podcasts logo is still the old one from before. I've updated it. The update's not taking. It's pretty low on the list of priorities right now. So you'll still see the old one. You won't see the new fancy guy that looks like me. But it's still the same show. as we're repopulating with all the episodes. So I'm going to I'll narrate a little bit of the visuals and stuff in this and talk about it for the sake of someone who's just listening to this via audio. But I would say if you're listening to this via podcast, pause it, go to this. I'll put the link to this in the description. Go and watch the video first. It's something, I can't tell how big it is. 25 minutes long. Totally worth it. You've got to see the visuals to get the art. But let's go. Can you hear it?
Hey everybody, welcome back to Disillusioned Young Man Talks About the Maladies of Postmodern Society. When a man and a woman love each other very much, what usually happens is they take off all their clothes and they go to a secluded area, often referred to as the Temple of Pork by scholars and millions of other Americans, wherein what happens inside is largely a mystery. My buddy Raul said it's pretty crazy, but promptly thereafter a flying squirrel will deliver them a basket on their doorstep, and inside of this basket is something called a baby, which is basically like a little guy. And then right there what you have is called a family. Now the alleged issue is
the first time that I listened to this or watched this, when he says a baby who's basically like a little guy, I don't understand why it makes me laugh so fucking hard, but it does. So you I'm not going to narrate the visuals of it. For you on the audio, you can go watch it. So again, let me preface this. I'm going to violate the spirit of this type of art, and I'm going to psychoanalyze it.
Totally molest it.
Oh, I am going to do ungodly things to it because this is fascinating to me. This is so interesting to me about the way that what this reveals about the human psychology and the human condition and the generational relations to each other and all this sort of stuff. So irony is in Zoomer humor, irony reigns supreme. There's to kind of psychoanalyze them a little bit. They are coming of age in a world that's really, really shitty. They're coming of age in a world that sucks. In a lot of really, the thing is that it doesn't suck in meaningful ways. It sucks in meaningless ways. So there's the most natural response to for a person whose only experience of the world is this world sucks for a whole bunch of really meaningless reasons. The natural response is to reject meaning. Just reject meaning altogether. Say, I don't care about meaning. If I don't care about meaning, then it doesn't matter to me that the world is meaningless. The thing about meaning is that is a meaning. Meaning is one of these things that you can't reject. It's impossible. So you can draw meaning then out of the meaninglessness of their art. So you've got this guy just another thing that reigns throughout Zoomer humor is parodying of like the people who take themselves too seriously. Because this is like a core tenet of being a Zoomer, is that you can't take yourself seriously and you can't take anyone else seriously. You can't take anything seriously because it's all absurd. It doesn't mean anything. So the guy who takes something seriously becomes the butt of the joke. So the whole point of it is to see how like absurd and completely departed from reality we can get while having everybody just nod and join in. And so then the fun becomes being the people who are on the inside, the ones who get the in joke. How am I doing so far, Cooper?
You know, I was thinking that Zoomers should quit vaping and they should do nicotine lozenges instead. That'd be pretty Zoomer.
Yeah? Why?
Yeah. Well, see,
I guess you suck on both of them.
Yeah. Yeah. You're doing good. You're doing great.
Okay. So in this particular case, obviously the person he's stereotyping is like the really serious YouTuber who's going to sit here and have their props and their perfectly crafted backdrop and stuff like I've had in the past. This very carefully manicured backdrop. And he's going to sit here and he's taking himself really seriously. He's talking like this is really serious. And as we go through the video, you'll see this is actually a really serious subject. And he does he treats it really well. He's obviously very well read, obviously very intelligent, successful. And there's a real irony in this production value, this choice for production value, because his lighting is perfect. His camera is phenomenal. He's obviously got a nice camera. He's got multiple camera angles. I don't know whether he has 2 different cameras set up or he films all of it with one angle and then he goes and does the other angle. In either case, that's a significant investment in this production. But then there's this big investment in this production.
But it sucks.
To make it suck. Yeah. Like he's doing a foot cam. He has a second camera angle that shows his bare feet. You're going to see more coming up. It's this like, why would you invest so much time and effort into making something so shitty? And that's what makes it so good. It's so good because he invested so much time into this targeted making these things shitty. And what's fascinating to me with this, I guess I'm just going through it all right here, right now. What's fascinating to me about this is how incredibly meaningful it is for them to do these really meaningless things. This is what the generation is finding meaning in. They're finding meaning in uniting around the rejection of meaning. We'll continue.
Is that this whole process is happening a lot less. Marriage rates are falling, birth rates are falling, and people will go through this whole process, the temple of pork and all, and then not stay together afterwards. And I mean, I totally understand. I can hardly live with myself, let alone some dumbass bitch. Am I right? But the real question to ask...
You get the shot of the feet and then a stock photo. That's the other thing. He's got like a green screen set up beside him. So he's obviously gone to the trouble to set all of that up to put like random, only tangentially associated. He's like doing word association games kind of with the pictures that get put up there.
But they don't really associate. They don't mean anything. They don't associate to what he's talking about at all.
No, well, like he says temple of pork and he shows a picture of a pig wearing a top hat. So it's like pork and pork, but these things are like completely had nothing else to do with each other. Why would you show a picture of a pig and a top hat when you say temple of pork? And temple of pork, it's like you're doing this kind of scholarly style presentation, but you're saying things like temple of pork or some dumbass bitch. And the whole thing is just so absurd. It's just completely absurd. And the whole thing is bait. Like the idea with something like this is to try to find the straight man who's going to come in and take you seriously.
Vosh.
Like Vosh. Apparently Cooper was watching a video of Vosh critiquing one of this guy's videos as if his video was serious. The great thing about these videos is they're not serious, which shows you just how serious they are. Because like he treats a lot of really heavy subjects. He's talking about heavy, dark stuff because this is a heavy, dark generation. But he's doing it in this completely absurdist, meaningless way, which actually provides so much meaning because his target audience identifies with it so much. And they're like, yes, you get me. You see the world the way I see it. You got anything, Coop?
Oh, keep going.
All right.
To ask here is, why is this happening? And also, like, is this even really a bad thing? Or is this just an antiquated, oppressive system that we're happy to be rid of? As a anthropologist and a graduate from the University of Phoenix, I seek to answer these questions. But first, let me establish that the institution of the family is objectively failing. People are getting married later, if at all, and then when they do get married, they get divorced most of the time. Nobody's having kids. When's the last time you saw a pregnant lady walking around? And if anyone would notice that they're gone, it would be me, because whenever I see them, I like to chase them around and stuff. But yeah, that's happening. The population pyramid is completely inverting. Like, let's say hypothetically, if I was into minors, in this hypothetical world where I'm really interested in seeing minors, I would be in a pretty bad situation. But anyways, let me take you through chronologically why this is happening.
All right, so there's a for the audio people that says industrialization. He's going to start breaking this up into eras. There was something I was going to say. It had to do with in group, with this being like an in group signaling. I lost the thought. There was something in there that triggered a good one, but I don't remember what it was. We'll continue.
Long before TikTok or electric cars or the beloved ASMR mommy-dommy girlfriend snuggles her good boy, when children used to frolic the fields and pick berries from the vibrant bushes, the pre-industrial era. In this era, people lived in extended families. Both parents, lots of siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, all lived in the same community and oftentimes even under the same roof. In this system, both parents stayed at home because generally work and home were the same thing. It was the agricultural economy. And this was the system for most of history. And I don't want to make it out like this was perfect or anything. You know, every once in a while, some dudes would.
So now this I have to say for the audio, people listening via audio, at the 3-minute mark, you'll just want to go see what he's doing. This is something that's just for the visual people. You'll want to go see what he's doing on the screen here.
It's really important.
Very. So one of the things with this, I guess the Zoomer rebellion against meaning is, so the product, I guess we'll talk about the product of it, like where it came from. And you can get this, I'm basically just repeating the thoughts that are in The Fourth Turning when it describes the relationship of the boomers to Gen X to millennials to Gen Z. And you can look at the economic realities that, well, I guess the things that were economic realities as those generations were born, the conditions they were born into and the conditions they came of age into. Because those are, it's undeniable that these things have a big imprint, leave a big imprint on who you are as a person, the way you see the world. So the boomers come out of the post-war, immediate post-war era is when they're born primarily. And which means that when they were coming of age, but first of all, they're born in a time where there's great, a lot of energy has built up in the society because they just went through this big war. They just came out. They see themselves as the winners of it. Everyone's rejoicing and celebrating, and there's a big economic boom, and we're ushered into a new era, and then we're going to go to the moon, and there's all kinds of collective, communal, patriotic, nationalistic spirit. And so they come of age in that era where really like everything was at your fingertips. With the economic boom, we can get into why there was an economic boom and that we're now paying the price for that. But at the time, they were just experiencing the fruits of this economic boom. So to them, the world is full of possibilities. This is where you get all the stories of people who worked part-time during the summer to pay their way through college, and they got their medical degree, and then they bought a property for $150,000 in LA. And now, 40 years later, it's worth 10 million. And, he was a doctor his whole life. Like, in a very real way, these people benefited from like super abnormal, distorted prosperity more than basically any other generation in history. They came of age in probably the most prosperous era in history.
And then pulled the ladder up with them.
Yes. They built all of these systems that were designed to institutionalize them at the top and incentivize their own kind of people to succeed, regardless of the actual circumstances, the economic circumstances, political, etc. So, were you about to say something?
I was just breathing.
Okay. So that's the boomers. So they come of age in, with the hippies and the Beatles and time of great opportunity and lots of energy, et cetera, et cetera. Then you have the the 70s and 80s. And there's a time of more economic instability, recession, stagflation. Times are starting to get a little more rough. And you've had all of these boomers who grew up with like stable, wholesome families. Their parents retired and had lots of money, and they left them money when they died, and they're very well off. Their kids grew up with parents who were workaholics. For the first time, he's going to get into this here in a little bit, but for the first time, you have the parents, you have both parents working, because as he's going to talk about in a minute here, you have women who leave the home and start working. So you have both parents working. So Gen X becomes the latchkey generation. These are the latchkey kids who would go to school. They're going to these schools that were great. Their parents built them, but now they're kind of a couple decades on, and they're starting to get a little more run down. They're not quite as good. And the culture is starting to get a little more degenerate for a whole variety of reasons. So they grew up in a time, instead of a time of lots of energy and optimism and every graph go up forever, they're growing up in a time of more turmoil, and they find themselves left alone a lot more often and just kind of have to fend for themselves. So that generation, instead of being characterized by this kind of whimsy and naivete and idealism of the boomers, Gen X is more rebellious, anti-authoritarian, independent, maybe free spirit kind of.
You'll see a lot of overlap, I think, between the Zoomers and Gen X.
Mm-hmm. And the reason for that, I think, is that the Gen X primarily are the parents of the Zoomers. So the boomers' kids are primarily the end of Gen X and into millennials. Most millennials' parents are boomers. Some millennials' parents, like mine, are Gen X. But then a lot of the Gen X generation, their kids, they were, if you think of Gen X as being approximately 70 to 85-ish, then for when they were born, that means a lot of their kids were born in the mid to late 90s, as you're also getting people having kids later and later. So Gen X, most of them, their kids are the Zoomers. So the generation that was basically trained to just kind of cut your kid loose and like give them some money and give them whatever and just let them go and protect what's yours, because that's the boomer identity, is we worked for ours. We want ours. You better make sure we get ours. We'll give you some too, but you better make sure we get ours. And if it comes down to it, we're going to get ours and you're not going to get anything. That's like the characteristic ethos of the boomers. Their kids were raised that way, so they kind of naturally have raised their kids the same way. So now that the Zoomers, last thought here, the Zoomers are kind of like they're like the abandoned grandchildren of the boomers.
And I think you kind of get like two extremes when it comes to like the Zoomers and their parents. Their parents were either like kind of gone, like not around. You kind of have that. You have that again, or you have like helicopter parents.
Yeah.
You have like the people who reacted to their parents never being around by doing the complete opposite, which is just hovering over their kids.
Right.
Or you have the ones who just kind of followed suit.
Yeah, it's kind of like I think every generation is narcissistic and they just manifest themselves in different ways. So I'm not saying boomers are characterized by their narcissism, but boomers are characterized by their narcissism. And it's like that narcissism can be expressed in two ways, either by complete self-obsession and I don't care about you at all, or the other extreme would be total obsession with you and controlling every single thing you do. So it's like that's how the boomers' narcissism manifested. It's split kind of into those two categories.
My parents, I'm kind of like I'm a weird, as the horoscope chicks would say, I'm a cusp. Insofar as
you date a lot of horoscope chicks,
don't do that. Bad idea. My parents were boomers. They were at the tail end of being boomers, and then I'm at the very beginning of Gen Z. So I skipped 2 generations. I have older parents.
Yeah, so it's funny. I'm like 8 years older than you, I think, and my parents are. I think both of my parents are younger than both of your parents.
Oh yeah.
My dad is 54 and my mom is 51, I think.
My dad is 70, and my mom, she was born 62 or 64. My mom and stepdad both. So, yeah, they're in their 60s.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got I think what the Zoomers are becoming is in large part they're kind of in this, I don't know what the term is for here, but they're in this tension sort of with the Boomers, and I think that's not a mistake. It's not. I think this is kind of like a subconscious understanding coming out in having those words rhyme like they do, because I think the
dialectic?
Zoomers.
Did we
Maybe a
invent a new
dialectic kind of. Yeah, maybe the Zoomer Boomer dialectic.
Oh,
It's
that's something we could pontificate about.
Yeah, there we go. Let's put that on the list. Xavier, put that on the list. Because you have the Zoomers are sort of working out the demons that were given to them by their parents as a product of the Boomers. Now, obviously, you could go back and you could find reasons why the Boomers are trapped in dialectic tension with I'm sure that exists. But for our purposes, the Boomer generation is essentially there's not a whole lot of reason to go back beyond that right now, because those are basically the oldest people still alive. You've got some beyond them, but the Boomers are getting to where, and especially over the next 20 years or so, the Boomers are all going to die off. And that means that whole psyche is going to disappear. That whole psyche is going to be taken out of the equation. And the old people psyche is now going to be the Gen X people. So old people are going to have the spirit of the anti-authoritarian, rebellious, kind of feels abandoned and resents their parents, punk rock kind of aesthetic. Like those are going to be the people that are now retirees. And that's going to completely alter the way that it's not going to be instant, obviously, because it's not like all of them are going to die at the same time, but it's over the course of like 10 years, probably you're going to see a big die off, and it's going to change the collective psyche of the nation in a big way. So understanding the Boomer psyche and why it's there, and understanding the effect it's had on the Zoomer psyche, I think is one of the most important things you can do to prepare yourself for what the world is going to look like when that happens.
To answer the question of this fellow here in the chat, Dr. Crispy Rothschild. That's a good name, dude.
That is a good name.
He says, these are just marketing terms invented by advertising agencies. Am I right? Yeah, probably, but we need something to talk about tonight, so we're going to use them.
Yeah, right. And the fact that they're marketing terms invented by advertising agencies is actually like a verification of their validity, because successful advertising agencies have to deeply understand human psychology in order to be successful. So if they're inventing marketing terms, it's because those marketing terms are very applicable to the subject. They've captured that spirit. The people who understand like human psychology and the human spirit the best are sales and marketing experts, because that's the only way that they're going to be successful is by doing that. So they've made their life the study of the human mind and the decision-making and behavior and relationships. So the fact that
Hey, Buck is here. Hey, Buck.
What's up, Buck? Yeah, Buck's people are going to be running shit.
Yeah, everything's going to fall apart.
Yeah, we're long live
We're
King
doomed.
Buck. Well, just wait until we get to where the Zoomers are the retirees. Think of what it's going to be like 50 years from now, when you're approaching retirement age, and I guess 50 years from now, who knows what the retirement age is going to be 50 years from now, but think about how different the psychology of
80 years from now when I'm 120 or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Get my tax write-off.
Yeah. I don't think Social Security is going to be around by then.
Really?
Yeah, no.
Damn, that sucks. I was really hoping for that for my retirement.
Yeah, you've saved up for a long time, haven't you?
No, I paid into Social Security for all of like 8 years. I need to get what's coming to me.
Isn't that just like that? Actually, that's the Social Security issue is maybe the best issue you could study to understand the Boomer psychology, because the Boomers collectively now, of course, disclaimer, obviously there's specific Boomers who are different, don't think this way, but we're talking about the ethos of the entire group. They're like, I paid into my Social Security, I better get the money that's coming to me. And you're like, Okay, yeah, but by demanding that, you're making a massive draw on the entire economic system that it can't be sustained, and it's going to crash the whole system down on top of itself. And they're like, "Yeah,
And
I'll be
they
dead."
Yeah, and they know that, like, I'm paying into this, and I'm never gonna see that. They know that.
Mhm.
They don't care.
They know full well. I'm not saying every single one of them, but enough of them know full well exactly what's happening. But this is literally just them siphoning money away from younger generations. It's basically like what would you call it? Like it's the extended family being enforced on the nuclear family. It's it's like a state mandated extended family. They're forcing you to sustain them and pay for them through your work. Um by state decree.
Yeah, instead of
Um,
being like good parents, who earn
right,
the love and endearment from their children,
right,
so their kids want to take care of them, on the
right,
family farm or whatever. No, we're gonna
right.
make sure you take care of us.
Uh-huh. And what's funny is that they were the ones like the boomers were the ones who grew up with the parents who were like who had survived the Great Depression and World War II. So their parents were all very dutiful and scrimped and saved and very good with money and were very family oriented. Like that was the whole psychology of the previous generation. And the boomers are like were given the whole world, and then they're like, "Hey, I earned this." That's the whole psychology that it plays out in memes because people just identify that dynamic out there. They just say, "Oh, this is how the world is out there." Well, this is how boomers in particular are. This is a particular facet of the boomer psychology. The like, I earned this and you can't take it away. I don't care how good it would be for everybody else. Um, Xavier says, ironic, the boomers have a pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality, but expect us to pay for their retirement. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So can you imagine then how, as someone growing up into this world where this is the psychology of your grandparents, ostensibly, then this is part of where you get the Zoomer psychology of, all right, well, fuck it, nothing matters. Like I'm gonna sit here. What was the meme that you shared the other day about the teacher who was talking about the 9-year-olds?
Oh, I'll pull it up right now.
This is like what we're starting to see is the generation immediately after the Zoomers. Like,
And they're Zoomers on steroids.
yes, they're like, yeah, what did I say earlier? Turbo Zoomers. These are
Yeah.
like, this is the generation coming after the Zoomers is not more sober minded than the Zoomers.
They're even
Go ahead,
better.
you have it.
Yeah. Yeah, written by a teacher. I witnessed the most fascinating thing today, in my opinion. My 4th grade art class were talking while they did their work, and one of them was like, quote, "If you work hard all your life, ... it means nothing," end quote. And the response was to all crack up and start running with this bit like, quote, "You work all your life on an oil painting. The mayor comes in. He says, 'I didn't even ask you to do that painting.'" They kept going, giving examples of nothing mattering and laughing hysterically. They're 9. Like, we think our humor is depressing or whatever. How are they going to be? Yeah, that captures it.
Mm-hmm. And what I see, like, I guess this is part of being like, for whatever reason, like I really get the Zoomer humor, and I can sort of stand aside from it, and I can see the people like boomers in particular. It's oil and water. Trying to get a boomer to understand the perspective of a Zoomer is impossible.
Yeah, I spent all of yesterday. Well, okay, not all of yesterday. I spent like an hour reading articles by like boomers and fucking Gen X, probably millennials at this point. All this, who are the spinsters writing for all the major media outlets these days? They're probably millennials. In any event, they were like dissecting and trying to explain Zoomer humor for like a boomer audience, and there's very few things that make me so angry that I consider like poisoning the drinking water of a remote Chinese village. That was one of them. Like they would have some schizo Zoomer meme and then try to explain why it's funny. Like, you're
And
the
then
joke.
get really concerned about it.
Yeah, you are the joke.
Oh man, what was the other one? The cornflake one?
Hmm.
Like this here. I don't know if this will show up on the if I can get it on the screen. So this meme here, hopefully it's not reversed. It just says cornflake with this big cornflake spelled funny with this big weird slender man looking dude like eating cornflakes with a gigantic hand holding a spoon. It is completely absurd. There's no point to it whatsoever. And I spent
laughed for
a collective like
15
20
minutes
minutes
at that.
yesterday laughing about that meme.
Yeah.
Cooper and I started talking to each other and just talking to each other about the meme. We couldn't stop laughing. We're like, why is this so funny? I don't understand why, but for whatever reason, it's like when you hit the fringe of anti-meaning, it's like you come back around on meaning somehow. Like running away from meaning is just taking you toward meaning. So yeah, okay, so that was the generation. The big thing I wanted to talk about was the dynamic from boomers to zoomers and the way that I think is kind of mediated by Gen X. And then the millennials are a subject that's kind of been beaten to death. Everyone is very aware of the millennials. And I think the role that the millennials are, we might do another episode where we could talk about millennials and I think what'll be interesting is the relationship between the millennials and the next generation, skipping the zoomers. But
Random username has a really good point here. Boomers like Social Security because it allows them to walk away from taking care of their parents and forces their kids to take care of their grandparents. That's a really good point.
That is a good point. Yeah. Yeah, it's just offloading of responsibility. And again, I'll make the disclaimer. There is obviously there's plenty of great boomers who are not like this. What we're saying is this is what characterizes the entirety of that generation.
Trump 2024.
Uh-huh. That's right. So yeah, so I wanted to talk about that relationship between those generations and the way that the boomers have kind of set the zoomers up, and the way they're trapped in this, I guess, is kind of a dialectical tension. Because then I don't know if we'll actually get through the whole video, but we'll kind of give you guys the gist of it. And you can go watch it yourself. I have no idea how I've never seen this guy before. He's got like 300,000 subscribers on YouTube. He's been around forever. He's in all like the same circles that I follow. And
the chat is turning on us.
What are they saying?
I don't know, guys. The vast majority of your ideas about the generational breakdown are perpetuated by fake stats and demoralizing Khazarian propaganda.
I think that is... I don't know if that's serious or not. It's Slowboy Whiteboard. I've seen him around a lot. I don't know if that's serious or if it's if he's memeing. The USA is so different region to region, contains so many cultures, it's impossible to generalize.
Well, we're going to generalize because that's what we do.
Yeah,
here.
Right.
We just make shit up.
What's the foot cam about? All right, Dr. Crispy Rothschild, here we go. We'll continue with the foot cam.
Would roll through your village, starts throwing javelins at all the bitches and having their way with your women and, killing everybody, which wasn't very chill. But then a young fella named Philip Industry created something called the Industrial Revolution, and everything changed. In the new industrial economy, the extended family was a lot less viable, and we transitioned into the nuclear family unit instead, which fit the needs of industrialization a lot more. In the nuclear family unit, the husband goes to work because men are the stronger laborers, and the wife stays home and is the homemaker. They take care of the kids. The nuclear family unit worked well, but because it's not like our biological standard, it's not how we've lived for most of human history, it's a little bit more fragile, and it requires certain conditions for it to work well. As you will see, these conditions are no longer being met now. And in some ways, the extended family is ideal, but generally now people are a lot more spread apart. If you can get everybody in the same place, great. But the nuclear family is what we need to make work. And the nuclear family did survive and seemed to work for a long time. It peaked between
So I just realized we're only 4 minutes into this video. So yeah, we're definitely not going to get all the way through it. But this is something here that he said that I think this is a really interesting point. I've never thought about it this way before. Because once upon a time I was on like Team Nuclear Family, and I was like, how could you be against the nuclear family? And then I realized that a lot of the people who were against the nuclear family were actually advocating the extended family or the tribal structure. And I realized, oh yeah, tribal structure, that's even better. I grew up basically part of a tribe. I was a huge extended family, had like 75 people who all lived within an hour or so of each other. And so that's how I grew up, and I can vouch. Yes, that is the way you want to do it. You do not want to be far removed from your whole family. It sucks,
dude.
But
yeah, the nuclear family is just like the vestiges. That's like what's left of the
right,
traditional family structure.
Right.
I grew up the complete opposite. Like I had my parents, my siblings, my grandparents. To this day I don't know any of my cousins. I don't know really any of my aunts and uncles beyond like my parents' siblings. And we all live in the same town. We all live within like 30 minutes of here. I don't know any of them. I have one cousin that I know and that I keep up with. Complete opposite.
It's interesting, and I think that your experience is probably it's not uncommon among Zoomers. I think the people in your age bracket a lot of them have had that experience. They're just not there's a whole variety of reasons for it. There's the proliferation of an ease of travel, means of travel, and people moving different places for jobs or being able to move. I mean, we're almost kind of become, over the last 20 years, we're kind of like prisoners of our prosperity, that we got used to this world where, the money was flowing and everything was great and you could kind of pick up and move here, pick up and move there. But then gradually things are starting to get to where it's a lot harder to make a living and people are struggling more. It's not easy. So people get isolated. They'll get trapped out in a location.
At this point, my grandparents have passed away. Like I said, my parents are in their 60s and 70s. Once they're gone, it's literally me and my siblings. That's it. I don't know anybody else.
And these are problems. Like, this is what he's talking about in this video, is like, these are problems that you can't solve these problems quickly. Like, you can't just spin up a family. You can't just, invent like siblings and cousins and stuff that are the same age. If previous generations aren't having kids, or those kids aren't staying together, then as this dispersal happens, you're getting more and more isolated people, and it's not a problem that you can solve quickly or overnight. Now, fortunately, you can get your own extended family. You can become part of a tribe, an extended family that you can sign up for, in the form of a church. That's part of the role of the church, is that for people who are orphaned, to be able to have the church as their family. That's one of the roles that the body of Christ serves. But I don't remember what got us off on that.
Oh,
you're talking about your family not knowing. Yeah. So when he the first time I listened through this, and he said basically, like, once upon a time it was like the tribal structure, and then became the nuclear structure, and then the nuclear structure has fallen apart. But he was like, basically, we need to make the nuclear structure work. My instinct to that was, we don't really. I mean, we could just, what we need the tribal structure. But as I thought about this a little more, I think this is actually an interesting point that he's making, that in order to arrive back at the tribal structure, I think you have to go back through the nuclear family. You have to be able to make the nuclear family work in order to make the tribal structure work.
Yeah, someone's got to make the kids.
Right. And then not just that, but to have a stable, secure hierarchy, that stable, secure hierarchy has to be started with a man, with a patriarch. And that patriarch has to have a wife who loves him and supports him. You have to have that, that dynamic in order to grow the tribe. So, I thought that was an interesting point that he made, kind of indirectly, that sort of caught me off guard, because I was thinking I kind of knew, basically what he was saying. And then he said that. At first, I was like, "No, I don't." I disagree with him. But then I thought about it more, and I realized actually he's right. That
Matt, these family structures, this is all antiquated. It's time to transcend and become hyper individualists.
Right, like Brian Johnson.
Yeah, we should all become like gay vampires. That's what we should.
All right, we'll continue this.
1945 and 1965 in America, which was the golden age of marriage, where 95% of people got married.
Big money, bitch. Hey, grandma. You see it's growing.
It's no secret that we have a lot of economic problems today in the Western world. And while we might have high like GDP or whatever, this is awfully misleading. A man used to go to work and with his one wage be able to provide for himself and a whole family and buy and own a house. This was true whether it was an office setting, hard labor, or even a service job. But now men with these types of careers have a hard time supporting just themselves a lot of times, which is oftentimes what's happening now due to the stats I talked about before. Guys are working just to go home and support themselves, which is kind of like, what's the point anymore?
This is
because the only real
this is like a this is super real. Because like in my case, so I'm a married guy with 3 young kids, and my wife stays home with the children. And ostensibly on paper, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I'm making a really good wage, and I can barely afford to make rent most months.
That's a reality that, especially in the career that you have, that's a it's a bad omen for the future that this is starting to become a reality. And it's a very real there's this dynamic between the boomers and the zoomers. And this is something that someone tweeted this at me, and I should have pulled it up. I forgot. Someone tweeted something really interesting to me the other day. I said, what was it? So people were doing this thing on Twitter where they were going around doing the like post a picture of you when you were 19. And now this is an example of Zoomer, not humor, sort of humor, but this is like the Zoomer view of things. So once upon a time, Facebook was a thing, and everybody would post their stuff on Facebook. All of us have a history of having posted. I mean, if you're over, I don't know, 30, you've had an experience. You had the time where you used Facebook to like post pictures of your meal and like post pictures of yourself, and you'd go upload all your selfies, and you'd go out with friends and do something, and then you'd post all your pictures. And some people still use it that way, but using it that way has become characteristic of a boomer. This is like the boomer grandma that like uploads all of her pictures on her Facebook profile, and is like, that's kind of like the grandma's territory. And then you've got like the boomer grandpas. There's all these stereotypes of how Facebook is used that have become like memes throughout the society. One of those things, like post a picture of yourself doing yada yada. This is kind of a callback to that era where people would like fill out little surveys about themselves, like all the different places I've gone and things I've done, and which was sort of like the social media
quizzes. Do you remember
those?
The
quizzes, the relationship quizzes, and like you and your significant other fill this thing out. Like all of us did this stuff.
This is what Muppet character you are.
Right. Yeah. When social media first became a thing, this is what people did. But the people who were using social media, kind of the younger people moved out of that, and the old people kept doing it because it's kind of like the chainmail stuff with email before social media was a thing. We all had the grandparents, maybe still have the grandparents, who would forward you like the inspiring message supporting George Bush or whatever. And so there's this thing was going on Twitter, and I was like, I actually kind of like this. This is sort of, it reminds me of, it's just like simple kind of naive humor, or not even humor, but just kind of like a little thing we're all going to do together. Let's post pictures of ourselves when we're 19 and laugh at them. And I was like, this is like a callback kind of to like a past time. It just kind of I felt kind of nostalgic for the era. And I was trying to think of, when did that era die? Like, when did social media, the tenor and the dynamic of social media change? And because if social media is like the Times Square of our, I guess like our it's like the public town square, is what social media has become. So as that thing changes in shape and tenor and dynamic, then that's reshaping our minds. So I want to understand why this is. And I realized, I think that the time when things really shifted was probably 2014-ish. And I found out, I went and looked this up. The two big events, there was actually three big events that stuck out in my mind prior to Trump. And that was Trayvon Martin, the Ferguson riots, and Gamergate. And it turns out, so the Trayvon Martin thing was in 2012. The Ferguson riots and Gamergate both started in August of 2014. That seems somehow significant to me. But that kind of laid the groundwork for Trump and Twitter and 4chan and all this stuff that really, really took off and came into the public consciousness around that time. What somebody pointed out to me on Twitter was that Obama, the arrival of Obama on the scene, was the thing that, and that cycle, really, his second term in office, was what really brought the boomers onto social media. Because if you remember, if you go back to, I don't know, 2003 to 2011-ish, something like that, it was kind of a thing that like old people weren't on social media at all. There was no, your grandma wasn't on Facebook. She didn't know how to use it. We all had
about it. They were scared about like compromising their credit card information, and the internet was a scary place.
Right. Yeah. So they needed their kids to like teach them how to get on the internet. But then you have the great, a beautiful, articulate black man who's elected president, and all the boomers are falling all over themselves to hop online and start talking about how great they think it is that we have a black president and this world is changing and I'm so happy about it and yada, yada, yada. And
I remember as a kid telling my mom that if she ever got a Facebook, I wouldn't be friends with her. And she got really sad about that.
Yeah.
I was trying to preserve something good.
Yeah.
But despite my best efforts, it's over.
Yeah, you didn't want it. You didn't hurt her. You didn't want her to see everything that was going on inside your head getting put out on social media.
Well, luckily I've deleted everything. So
So you have the Obama phenomenon, and then going into Ferguson and or Trayvon Martin and then Ferguson, that brought a lot of the older people onto social media. I think there's also probably a dynamic here of just kind of off the cuff. I think the early 2000s was when a lot of the boomers started retiring. So you had a lot of them leave the workforce, and then they need something to do to entertain themselves. They pick up social media. They start getting on there. So that series of events there was what pulled the boomers into the online space that previously wasn't really occupied by them. Prior to that point, the people who were primarily shaping the personality and the character of the internet were Gen X to begin with, because they were the people that invented a lot of the modern internet, and then the millennials. This was the personality of the internet. And then the boomers got on. The boomers got involved. And I think reading the last 10 years or so in the way that the culture has shifted and the way social media has led that, through the lens of the boomers getting on social media and bringing their collective personality to bear on it, I think that's a really, really fascinating insight.
This meme that he has pulled up in this particular on his green screen may not show it, but I am so close to giving up. I am unhappy. I am in genuine pain. All I do is cry and stay silent. That's a great meme.
Yeah.
Try to explain that to a boomer.
Yeah. If that doesn't
explain why that is funny.
Why is it funny?
You just get it or you don't.
Yeah. And I get it. Like I get it, but
probably
it's
probably because it's like true.
Mm-hmm.
But like taking something that's true like that and kind of like hidden and then like making it really explicit with a bunch of like flashy colors and shit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like saying that ironically is the closest thing that Zoomers will get to being able to like express their actual feelings about things.
Right.
So that's how they do it.
Right. Right, because they're for whatever reason they're uncomfortable reifying the things because I'm sure this is some kind of coping mechanism, and it's like
Mhm.
yeah, it's cope. Like this is where the whole meme of cope came from. It came from
Well,
this
and
sort of
this,
dynamic.
speaking as the resident Zoomer, when somebody, like even a good friend, tries to like talk about something really serious, if they're really sincere and poignant while they do it, it makes me like uncomfortable and suspicious,
Mm-hmm.
which is probably just like a defense mechanism or something. But it's like I'm cool talking about really, I don't know, dark shit, but like put a couple layers of irony on there, make some dick jokes in between. That's how we handle this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's all
And
meaningless.
this is it's like I think the kind of the latent impulse when people hear that is because this is kind of the boomer crafting of the public of the mind that you hear is well that's not healthy. You shouldn't you shouldn't cope with things. You should pick a better way to do that. Which yeah, that's true, but also like there's
You don't
this
have anybody.
yeah. Like who are you to tell me to pick a better way to express my deepest, most innermost fears
And not only
pain?
that, but I mean like you don't have anybody. Zoomers, they
Yes.
don't have anybody. They're like as far as like friendships and things, this is all really, really the rates are low, we'll say.
Right. Right.
So how else do they like what is their like it's like, okay, either I write a suicide note or I make this fucking meme.
Right.
And that I just like throw it out into the void. And maybe it I don't know, disappears or something. I don't know what happens to it. That's just
This
the
is
outlet.
this is probably getting too serious for a Zoomer's tastes. What I'm about to say, because it's kind of like you said, when people start getting
I'm
really
already
serious,
getting
it's like
uncomfortable.
I've been uncomfortable almost this whole time because it's like I feel like I'm looking at something I shouldn't. Kind of. That's kind of like taking Zoomer art seriously and trying to break it down and understand it is violating the spirit of the art. And I feel that very distinctly. So it's awkward and uncomfortable to try to unpack it. Yet I can't stop. It's very very awkward. But it's kind of like the Zoomer spirit is like a walking corpse. It's like a zombie. It's already died. And everybody the circles, the little circles it formed to laugh around these kinds of jokes are sort of like it's like they're attending their own funeral. They've given up hope on the world around them. It's kind of like the world is it's like by the time we showed up to the party, the whole thing was a fucking shit show. So, we're just gonna sit here and kind of like
That's
like
actually a
laugh
really
in
good
the
analogy. Like if you've ever had a really good friend die and then you and your buddies are kind of standing around their coffin in the ground and you're telling like dick jokes and stuff and that's just to kind of like lighten up the atmosphere. That's a
yeah.
really good like analogy for just the whole attitude. It's just
Uh-huh.
this is all sucks. Everything already died. There's nothing left for me. We'll just make memes and joke about it. I don't know.
And like if you're standing around that guy and you start making dick jokes and stuff about it, and like you start making dick jokes about him, you start degrading him and making fun of him and stuff,
Yeah.
and everyone joins in. You all start shitting all over the guy who just died and like making fun of him in absentia, because this is how you actually demonstrate how much you loved him, like how much he meant to you. So in a really weird way, this deep irony is ironic itself. This is actually this nihilism and this like spitting on the society and like pissing on its ashes and just laughing, cackling maniacally about it is actually an expression of deep love and fondness and nostalgia for that society. And this, I think that's whether the future lies in just kind of spinning out and crashing and burning, or bottoming out and pulling up into a new kind of the creation of a new age, I think is going to turn on the Zoomer psychology there. To what extent does the Zoomer mind collectively remain at that funeral? And to what extent do they become self-aware and recognize what's happening and then embrace the meaning inside the non-meaning. Is that,
I
did
don't
I
have a
get
lot
too
of
abstract?
I don't have a whole lot of hope for the Zoomers doing that.
Yeah, and that's why I think this is kind of the issue that really determines whether you should be black-pilled or white-pilled. And I think a lot of people are very black-pilled because they don't see the potential of the Zoomer generation. But I think that the Zoomer generation has a ton of potential. Like this guy right here epitomizes it to me.
Maybe you can see it because you're outside it.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself black-pilled at all, but I don't know. I'm too steep, like too deep in this, the surreal memes and the everything being deep fried and fucking
Cornflake.
cornflake. Yeah.
But like you pointed out earlier when we were talking about this, that like the guy's in good shape. Like he clearly takes good care of his body. He's got to be lifting regularly, and so he's got energy, he's got motivation, he's got like the joie de vivre. He's producing this level of sophistication, both like educationally, like his like psychologically, and then the practical skills required to put something like this together and amass a following of 300,000 people. This is an extremely high aptitude person who knows how to generate a ton of value from his skills. So he's simultaneous. You don't do something like this if you're actually nihilistic.
Yeah.
If you actually have embraced the black pill, if you're actually diving into the deep pit of black nothing, you don't put out this level of investment in something. So within the war against meaning of the Zoomers is actually a really deep, profound sense of meaning. And I think what we're starting to see kind of burgeoning up is kind of like it's naturally coming up among left-wing, or not left-wing, but right-wing content creators like this, because it's the counterculture. It's the counterculture that's coming along. So this is where the real outlier minds are starting to manifest themselves. So I think there's a lot of, this is my like optimistic pitch, which flies completely in the face of the whole spirit of the thing. I understand that, but this is my optimistic pitch that I think the potential of the Zoomer generation is phenomenal. And I think that like this guy is an indicator why. And also it's really funny because his dick jokes are fantastic. Ready to keep going?
Yeah, remember, you do have to pick up your mother-in-law from the airport.
Oh, I do. That's right. It is. I have to go. Thank you for that. Time flew by quick. What's that?
I said, say thank you to Amy. She said something in the chat.
Oh, yes. There she is. Okay. Thank you, my love. She's going to cringe that I called her that. All right, guys. Well, I guess maybe we'll pick this up and go through some more of it, or maybe we'll do something else another time. Hopefully this stream was enjoyable. Hopefully you guys like this. We're looking at doing more of this type of thing upcoming. So I appreciate all of you. Yeah, like, subscribe, do all the Facebook stuff. Share the show with a friend if you like it, and then follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled, on Instagram at RealKingPilled, and then you can follow Cooper on social media, but he doesn't really do anything except lurk. So he's at Cooper Brooks on Twitter if you want to go over there. And I think that's it.